Hi, I'm Zoe with Paranormal Extraction, and yes, we do kind of a format. I just want to let everybody know of like we're having coffee and we're having like a little talk show, which may come in the future. Anyways, I'm Paranormal Extraction, Zoe Starr, and guess what? Today we have Mark Olly on again. He has, the book title is called The Green Man. Now, he also has 7 books out. He's an archaeologist, and of all things, a musician with a CD coming out in October. So I'm going to go over and introduce Mark. He's gonna, I don't know, you guys have probably seen the Green Man. A lot of people use it like outside in their gardens, and they have little pendants that they use. But he's gonna give you the facts, okay, on the Green Man. And so I'm really excited today to introduce one of my favorites, Mark Olly. Okay, Mark, tell us a little bit. You have 7. Hi, thank you for being on. I truly appreciate it, and I know you're all the way across the country in the UK.
Yeah.
Yep. And so give us a little history. You're an archaeologist, you got these 7 books out. They can go on Amazon and look up Mark Olly, really easy to do. And there's all your 7 books. And then this archaeologist thing comes in and blows my mind because it's so scientific. You know, a lot of people just think this green man is, you know, a garden ornament of good luck or something like that, which I'm sure you'll talk about. But is there anything else I missed as far as in your, you know, your bio that you want to add on?
Not really. All I would say is that I did start as an archaeologist, so the first 3 books that are in print are called Celtic Warrington and Other Mysteries, and they're regional UK archaeology, but they do contain a lot of international mysteries. And then after that, you've got The Disappearing Ninth Legion, you've got Life and Times of the Real Robin Hood, you've then got Revealing the Green Man, which we're tackling tonight, and then you've got Crystal Skulls and Human Heads, which is what we tackled last time. And the two kind of relate. So
yeah. You got the whole gamut going on for you. I mean, you're very eclectic. How's that? Would that be you?
Yeah, that's many times I've been called that, so I resemble that remark.
Okay, all right. Well, I've been called a lot of things. I'm kind of used to it. So anyways, let's talk about the Green Man, and let's go into this ornamentation thing, or at least start with that so people kind of get a little bit of an idea of that process. I also, because you're so scientific, everybody out there, I had to write down some questions to ask Mark this time, because scientific stuff doesn't really stick in my head so much. I mean, I understand it, but I really needed a few questions. And Mark and I decided to go this way, right?
Yeah.
Because I just was like, what? So, okay, so let's start. What is the Green Man?
Okay, for those people out there that are wondering what on earth we're talking about, if you ever get a face which is usually green and it's completely surrounded by leaves, or it's peering through leaves, or it has all kinds of different foliage stuck to it. Some of them are even made up of leaves. They're completely made of leaves. That is the image that we're referring to. Only in the last 100 years really have green women appeared. So for thousands of years, possibly tens of thousands of years, it was always regarded as being a man. But there's also a positive side to it being a man, because you ladies did not have to be involved in any of the practices which resulted from that. But I'm running ahead slightly here. I'm going to stick with the questions this time. I will come back to that later.
I wanted to tell you that I noticed that a lot of people do have it, and I even had one in my garden. There's just something about it that, and they have pendants, that I just really love the look of it. I had no idea what it was, okay? But anyways, that's what I wanted to throw in there, because it is, if nobody knows what it looks like, they can see it on your book on Amazon. Or just, yeah, show me, please.
There we go.
Okay. That one doesn't look as good as the one that I put in my garden. So I wish I had that picture.
But you know what? Somewhere in here, I must have a better picture of a green man. I must have. This is an illustrated book, so there's no excuse for me really not to be able to find one. There should be one in here somewhere. You could have caught me already. Yeah. Terrible.
I know.
Terrible.
No, I know. In your own book, you can't find it. No wonder I don't know your scientific knowledge.
That's just. Do you know what? There's loads of archaeological pictures in here of green men, but there's nothing really. I suppose he's pretty close to the bottom one. There we go. See if you can. Can you see him?
Yeah, I can.
There we are, yeah.
But
yeah,
you can see him, but he looks mean.
He's definitely a mean one. He's a few hundred years old, but there you go. Hang on. There's one peering out from a garden, I think. Can you see him?
Oh,
yeah, those are the ones that you see out there.
Yeah, that's pretty much what folks are used to seeing, I think, nowadays.
Yeah, and there's even ones that have smiley faces.
Oh, yeah, there are happy ones and smiley ones. I suppose it's worth mentioning right at the beginning that the reason he ends up in gardens is that principally he is, if you like, a representation of life, especially greenery. You know, the life that you find in planet Earth, the fact that at the end of every autumn, we go into winter and then in the spring, wham, it's back again, this continuous cycle of life. So most people stick with that definition, and that's why he ends up in gardens, to encourage life, greenery, flowers, growing, wildlife and that sort of thing. Well, I'll probably return to that probably later on, but that's pretty much nailed why he's there. But, and this is the but, it hasn't always been that way. There's a lot more to him in the past than just that. He's not a modern symbol by any means.
Okay, so I always looked at it as a representation of like good luck over my plants. Is that true or not true?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, that's as good a definition as any. Yeah, I'll go along with that.
I just, you know what, you're so fun to talk to. I love talking to fun people and that smile. Oh my God, you're so great. Okay, so before we get into this, coffee talk here, right? You're just not sitting on the other side of the table, and you have no coffee.
No, I have a glass of something. I always do.
Oh, okay.
Cheers, by the way.
Okay, yeah, cheers. I have my coffee. Here we go. All right.
Hey,
coffee
brilliant.
talk. Where are you? You're on the other side. Okay.
This is amazing, isn't it? We're actually toasting each other here across the Atlantic Ocean. There are continents that separate us, and yet we're capable of doing this. Amazing technology.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Okay. So let's go into the past of the green man.
Okay. Yeah. Always a good place to start, actually, at the beginning. The oldest sort of records we have go all the way back to Babylon. And it's only in sort of the last couple of hundred years, fairly recent times, that the strange cuneiform writing that legends were written on, that we could actually start to read those, and they became significant, they became collected, and they became translated. And one of the things that came out of that was the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is super famous. You'd be able to buy sort of a cheap copy of it pretty much anywhere or download it. It's everywhere. But what people miss is the Epic of Gilgamesh goes all the way back to about 7,500 BC. So you're looking at a colossal, that's 9,500 to 10,000 years ago, when they wrote that story down. Not how old the story is, it could be 10, 11, 12,000, even further. And when you look at the story, and you start picking out the details, especially as an archaeologist, it looks very much like the very beginnings of humans deciding that they weren't going to just be hunter-gatherers. We weren't just going to wander around sort of, bumping off animals and digging up plants and vegetables. And we actually decided, a very sensible idea as well, we actually decided we were going to clear a few areas and start growing stuff. So, instead of, spending a week running through a woods trying to find a reindeer, you could just sort of go out there and, pick tomatoes and marrows and vegetables and whatever else that you grew yourself. So we switched to being farmers. And it is a major revolution. It took place in the Middle East around about, coincidentally between 12 to about 10,000 BC. Anyway, so this story is from that time. And the real thing that sort of strikes you is that back in Babylon, they had this god that was over the woods. And his name's Humbaba. Okay. Now, Humbaba's really important because at this point in history, it's not a god you want to upset. So the essence of the story is that these guys one day decide they're going to pick up axes and go into the forest. I presume these are bronze axes, because you back at the beginning of the Bronze Age, they go into the woods and they actually start to hack down trees in fear. You know, they're absolutely terrified that this god, this Humbaba, is going to come and get them for doing this.
Wow.
And it's the first, it's so early, and it's the first clearances. It's the beginning of clearing the woods. And what I always say to people is, in America it's easier than it is here. If you go and find a woods that nobody's really been in, that's just been left to its own devices, not only is it dark, it's dense, it's creepy, it's full of noises that you don't understand and creatures that you've probably never seen before. If it's a bit misty and it's a sunny day, it's magical. It's a really strange, bizarre, mystical place. Put that back to, 10,000 years ago, and that has a massive impact, enormous impact on the people that are going in there to try and clear it. And that is the earliest reference we have, this reference to this Humbaba, of this idea that the woods, in particular greenery, has its own particular power, its own particular god.
So it started out as something really bad.
Well, it carries on like that as well.
Yeah, okay.
The early green man, the little chubby face that, has a big smile and sits there in your back garden peering through the leaves, believe me, there's a darker side to that. And I think it's probably changed over time with us, as we as human beings have got more and more informed about what goes on in the woods, and we're used to the woods, and we put paths through there, and we've hunted in there, and, we've cleared woods. There was always respect, except maybe nowadays, why are we going bonkers? Why are we, destroying so much woodland now? That's a whole issue which I kind of hit upon at the end of the book. But certainly for tens of thousands of years, we have had this enormous respect for the greenwood. We always have. And I noticed that's actually, again, start at the beginning, why not? That's what got me to do the book. I thought, this is definitely a book for the 21st century. Very much in the same way as Crystal Skulls and Human Heads was inspired by things that are happening nowadays. The same thing is true of Revealing the Green Man, because it does take the whole green issue head on, and it gives us a solid historical archaeological thread that we can hang our hats on and say, we need to get back to where we were to some extent. We need to start to go back to the respect that those early hunter-gatherers had when they first started, wandering into the realm that wasn't really theirs. That's kind of how it began.
Yeah, so it started off as bad. When did they decide it was good? Or was it like a god, or what was it?
I suppose if you really wanted, the place that people don't really go to look for that sort of an origin is Egypt. And Egypt is pretty good as far as, if you want to know if something was adopted into civilization, Egypt is the place you would look. So you go looking for green men in Egypt, and sure enough, they're there. But they're on the temple walls, and they're usually either people taking offerings to the temple. So there's a great little illustration of one guy, and he's sort of carrying this tray, and this tray's bigger than him. It's piled up with all this stuff that's been produced from the fertility of the Nile that particular year. So he's taking it to the temple as an offering to offer that to the gods. So it's the logical extension of what we were seeing in Babylon. It's a few thousand years later, it's coming a bit closer to our time, but he is painted green. And this is where it gets interesting. So is the deity of the Nile, so that's fertility again. Okay. And occasionally you get a god called Ptah, who is the god of creativity and, blossoming creation. And you also get at the top of the gods is Osiris. You can get a green Osiris as well. And you're going to love this story because this is fab. Most people out there will remember as kids when they were at junior school, you get given clay or plasticine or whatever, and you get a pastry cutter, and you start cutting shapes out with this pastry cutter. Well, in Egypt, they did exactly the same thing. They had a pastry cutter shaped like Osiris. They'd go down to the river where the mud was, slap this thing in the mud, pull it back up and scrape it off. So you've got the shape of Osiris in mud.
Oh, wow.
But, well, as soon as this thing starts to get sunlight and as soon as it starts to get dampness, it bursts up and starts producing green shoots like cress. So they used to take these along to the temples and leave them as offerings. They were also left in tombs as a wish for resurrection and the afterlife, and they would just blossom into green, and you'd end up with a green Osiris. But all those principles that I've just mentioned, all of those things, all bolt on to the green man. They all apply to the image of the green man. It's developed. It's become a religion now. It's a thread that we can clearly see, and it looks like it was the same way pretty much all over the world. Certainly Europe and around the Mediterranean, into the east, North Africa, all of that zone had this same idea of a link to greenery, blossoming, coming forth, rebirth. The same idea just goes through everything.
Wow, that's interesting how it went from one place to the other to the other. That's kind of bizarre, don't you think?
I think
if it was so bad, and then all of a sudden now you're talking, hundreds, or were you talking thousands of years before it became this really great deity that they had, or a god or something that they're looking at. Here we go with all these other places that it's gone to. Did it trickle down to them, or it started in Egypt and then it moved on?
Well, the earliest evidence for it we've got is sort of Babylon and around that area, so that's sort of out that way. Then it seems to move across and we get evidence in Egypt, but almost at the same time we've got evidence then for the green man coming up in Europe, and the simple reason for that is most things were moved by sea. So you've got this Mediterranean sat in the middle with all its little rivers going off all over the place. You can even pop out into the Atlantic if you wanted to. So you can get around all over the place on a boat by sailing from place to place.
Right. Uh-huh.
And at some point around about this time, the whole idea that bronze, which is the number one metal, because it's green, and because it comes out of the earth, which it does, it's mined out, for some reason that gets bolted on. It gets joined on to the idea of the green man. I've got a brilliant example. I can move from Egypt and I can come to here where I live, to this country.
Okay.
Are you familiar with a guy called Lindo Man or Lindo Pete?
Actually, no.
No? Okay. Well,
no.
Your listeners will love this. It's a bog body. It's a bit like Otzi the Iceman. Otzi the Iceman was this Celt that was found frozen up in the Alps. And when they came to look at him, they found he was covered in tattoos.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah, he was carrying a bronze axe and he had a couple of crosses tattooed on him.
He had some tattoos too.
Well, that was the most exciting part of him.
Right.
So they decided, in this country, they had another bog body, quite a famous one. And he was in two pieces, but he was essentially complete. And they thought they'd have a look at him. And he's called Lindo Man. So they were having a look. They were having a look at him for tattoos down at the British Museum. So they're going all over his skin. They're doing analysis, trying to find out if he had any tattoos. And then they got a bit of a shock because he didn't have any tattoos. What he did have was an enormously high copper content in his skin. So much so high that they decided when he was sacrificed, because he was a human sacrifice, someone had actually painted him bright green from head to foot.
Wow. So the color green was copper. Okay.
Yes, it was.
So they painted him with copper.
Exactly.
Why?
Because he was going into the earth, he was sacrificed, he was dropped into a peat bog, and he was going off to the Celtic otherworld. He was going off to the land of wherever this greenery, this life, this copper, this resurrection, etc., wherever that comes from.
This is the first time I've ever heard of this. I mean, painting them in green. So why? Do you know why they painted him in green and covered him? If now this is a good thing and he was so he was sacrificed for the good. obviously, instead of the bad. And so
Well,
that's why I painted them green.
This is where it gets a bit, you know, we can only sort of guess at that. But
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, he was being sent to the other world. That's where he was going.
Okay.
So he had a sacrificial death, and he was sent off to the other world. What we do know is that the survival of that practice occurred in South America. So now you take a jump and you go to the Aztecs and the Mayans, and for about 2,000 years, they've been doing the same thing. So right at the beginning of 2,000 years ago, we had this bog body that was sacrificed, which seemed to obey the same rules as the beliefs of the Egyptians. Because remember, the Egyptians were still around for the Greeks, and they were still around for the Romans. So they overlap. All three of these overlap. As the Egyptians are gradually coming to an end, you've got the Celts going bonkers, sacrificing people painted green, and then the next minute, at the same time, you've got the South American cultures rising up, and they're doing exactly the same thing. This is why I believe that it's a worldwide religion. It's quite an important sign, if you like. It's another one of those. I said this in the last interview, I'm going to say it again. Everybody has this idea of Atlantis, you know, this super civilization that goes down in a flood, and then all the technology and everything gets scattered. And you can pick out these things like the giant stretched heads that I mentioned in the last interview.
Right.
They're all over planet Earth, they're everywhere. So are pyramids, so are a lot of other things, so are green men. The idea of green and the concept of green and what it represents at this point in history is the same pretty much wherever you go.
Yeah,
okay?
Right. Yeah, now it is.
2,000 years ago, it seemed to have been a standard belief system. I'll give you another example because you'll like this one. I personally love this. It's a great story. Because over here in Britain, we were scared by the idea of sort of joining the Roman Empire. So the Romans were equally scared of the idea of this mystical island covered in fog, you know, somewhere over the waves, of the idea of this island joining the Roman Empire, till you got this guy called Julius Caesar. Along comes Julius Caesar and he goes, right, I'm going to go and conquer that island. Don't care what anybody says, I'm going over there. 55 BC, let's go across and sort it out, and I want it in the empire. Anyway, 55 BC, he gets over here, his ships are wrecked, he has an awful time of it, so he has to come back the following year. So he comes back in 54. When he gets here, his guys won't get off the ships. Nobody will get off the ships because they're terrified. They're absolutely terrified of this island. They won't get off until the standard bearer gets off the ship, because he's got the imperial eagle. So then everybody else barrels off and tries to protect the eagle. But they're all stood there on the beaches in southern England thinking, where's everybody? Why are we not being attacked? There's nothing happening. And this is where it gets really creepy, because the Celts had painted themselves green and couldn't be seen because it's camouflage.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, these warriors, these massively vicious, nasty, big weightlifting, torque-wearing, nasty warriors, come flying out of the greenery, out of nowhere, onto the beach, most of them on chariots.
Oh, I love it.
They attack the Romans, throw spears at them, shoot arrows at them, and all the rest of it, and then they run off before the Romans can actually do them any damage. Now, it's really clever. This is in Tacitus' Gallic War. He records what's going on, and they don't understand it. He just says, you know, the people in Britain paint themselves with wood. It's not woad, it's wood. And nobody understands that. The Romans don't get it. It's not wood at all. Yes, they get it out of the woods, and it represents greenery and all the rest of it. It's actually copper. They painted themselves green, blue-green, in copper. Now, the other twist in the tale, which is equally humorous, these warriors are fighting with no clothes on, and there's a good reason for that. If you happen to get a knife or a sword or an arrow through a piece of clothing, 3 days later you die of blood poisoning because it gets infected.
Wow.
If you fight naked but painted in copper, if you get injured, the copper goes into the wound and gets rid of the germs. It sterilizes the wound and you don't die.
Unbelievable.
So the Romans are dropping dead 3 or 4 days after the first attack. The Romans are dropping dead from blood poisoning, and the Celts that they thought they'd killed are coming back. They're still coming back, the same guys.
Wow.
How amazing is that? They must have been so freaked out. Caesar only stuck around for about 3 months. He signed a load of fancy peace treaties with the guys down south, and then he cleared off. And then the Romans didn't come back again to Britain for nearly 100 years. So this island put literally the fear of the green god into them. You know what I mean? They did not want to come back. So there's a huge, massive untold story behind the Green Man, which is why I wrote the book. And that's 2,000 years ago.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. I actually, Mark, I have never actually heard that. Ever.
No,
I mean, you would, because you're the archaeologist and dug into all this research.
Yeah.
But that's an absolutely amazing story.
Well, you're probably the first station in the United States to get that, because it's in the book. But I don't know how many people in the US have dashed off and read the book. So it's the first time I've told the story to anyone from the USA. So you have an exclusive.
Well, thank God, because, like I watch a lot of Ancient Aliens and shows like this. Yeah. And, they go back as far as you did and talk about that kind of stuff. But I must say, out of all the shows that I've watched, I have never, and they talk about that, they talk exactly about what you're talking about, but they have never mentioned what you just said. Never. I've never heard it.
I've always stuck to, my mantra, if you like, is that the truth very often is more fascinating than the myth. And what I deal with as an archaeologist, and like you say, I'm a bit kind of science orientated. I've got an ist on the end of it, so it kind of I've got an ology, so it kind of makes me that way. And I do like to get to the facts, but the facts for me and the truth and the discoveries and the physical evidence, it blows my mind every time. It's more mind-boggling in some cases than any speculation, than anything that they can investigate and maybe not reach the end of. I think in the case of the Green Man, I think I've pushed it back as far as it'll go. But I have very, very strong suspicions that he's even older than I think he is. I think we're talking beginning of time kind of old. And he's, like I say, he's one of those threads that runs right the way through everything that you could broadly call Atlantean. So it's another part of that worldwide, scattered but yet unified knowledge that everybody seemed to know. So, again, it's another one of them tiny books with a big story to tell.
Right, okay, so do you feel like you're the only one out of all your research that's actually kind of gone into this as deep as you have?
It's interesting because that kind of moves us on to the next issue.
Okay.
It's a good, really, really good question, actually, because the question is, well, what happened? Where did this go? Where did this information disappear?
Right.
And the next place you would expect to find it, logically, you get rid of the Romans, shift them out of the way. The next kind of big group, if you like, were probably the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings. And they have it as well, because they've got people looking after the woods and the forests. And eventually they become the Norman foresters who are caring for the woods. And this is where it gets really amazing. I mean, the Normans come from France, so that, they start off over there and they call everything by medieval French names. And the foresters are referred to as verderers or verdigers, which literally translates as green men. And there's another reason for that as well, because they're running around wearing green, obviously, but green is quite important, because in the medieval times, if you want to wear green, you've basically got to mix acetic acid, which is wee-wee, with copper, and that produces green-coloured material. So these guys are literally running around wearing a skin of green. That's what they're doing. So they are green men. So what's happening is that the information I'm giving you now must have eventually become secret. It must have been known to people like the Hospitallers and the Templars and all the other orders of knights and the foresters, obviously. All of the nobles would have known what I'm telling you now, because it's the kind of belief that supported the care of woodlands and the care of the natural environment. And it stayed that way for hundreds of years, which is why we find green men in medieval churches, because the guilds were allowed to put their guild symbol in their place of worship. So you look up in the ceiling of these churches, there's obviously a wood somewhere, woodland nearby, and they've got all these green men stuck in the roof. That's because of the Guild of Foresters. It's because they knew that life, the whole resurrection, if you like, the rebirth of life, which is the Christian thing, is also part of the green man, because that's the same belief, the belief that it comes round, it goes green again, it blossoms again, it comes back again. And that's why they have it as their trade symbol. And that's the simple reason why it's in most churches, medieval churches, and why there's a lot of pubs as well in that area called the Green Man. If you get round like a woodland, places like the New Forest and things like that over here, we've got lots of pubs dotted around, and they're all called the Green Man. And it's where the foresters used to go to drink hundreds of years ago. So that's how it creeps through the lens of Christianity, if you like. It creeps into churches, and you get figures like the Green Christ, which is the face of popular face of Jesus, but with greenery coming out. And we've got a great one over here. You'd love it. I've got it in the book. It's a green Bacchus. It's the Roman god Bacchus, and he's producing grapes. And that's because the monks around here were renowned for brewing really strong wine. So they wanted this, this kind of boozy-looking green man, and he's fab. So he's in the book as well. But it's this idea of fruits of the earth again. The funny thing is, though, I mean, I'm now talking about, let's say, 1300, 1400, 1500. That's not that long ago. It's only 500, 600, 700 years ago. But the essential meaning and the background is the same. It's not changed in 10,000 years. That's mind-blowing. Pop, it's one of those. But the thing that kills it in the end, which is really sad.
No, I don't want to hear this.
Well, round about the same time, so you're talking 14, 1500s, some guy invents the printing press, and we go into what is now popular production. The trouble with popular production is it was the same 500 years ago as it is now. People now are trying to censor what you can and can't put on social media. Well, back then, books were social media. It's essentially the birth of social media, because you can print a book, you pass it on to somebody else. And a lot of people had things they wanted people to know, but a lot of people had things they didn't want people to know. So the last person to really mention the Green Man is William Shakespeare. He's got it in some of his writings. He's got this character that is very, very indicative of the Green Man. Certainly in the West, in Europe, in the origins of, Britain, America, Europe, etc., this is a point where things begin to die out. The Green Man eventually gets reduced to a nice little design, and you get this printing block popping up with the Green Man as a face, and people start to lose what it really means. In the Victorian times, he ends up as a Jack in the Green, which is this character that appears in processions around May Day. He appears in songs, he appears in plays, but he's lost the mystical, the sinister, the religious, the whole awe-inspiring nature part of him. It gets watered down like so many other things do. It becomes easy and it just becomes popular. The place where that's not strictly true is in the Aztec and Maya culture, because they just keep going the same. They have this thing with human sacrifice where the priests used to wear human skin, and they used to wait for it to go mouldy and turn green. And now, if anyone's ever been to the Yucatan Peninsula, you've got a massive, great big ocean with a dead flat kind of rocky, outcrop, which is the peninsula made of limestone, and then this really thin covering right across the top of it of greenery. And when I went visiting there, I described it as the world's biggest hedge. I mean, everybody calls it a jungle, but there's nothing really tall enough to warrant it being a jungle. It's just a massive hedge that just goes on for thousands of miles. But every single thing that keeps people alive, or kept people alive, for the whole of the Aztec and Mayan empires, everything has to come out of that thin skin of green, that greenery that grows all the way across that peninsula.
Really?
And
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
And they're aware of that. The Aztecs, the Mayans, and the priests were aware of that, So they used to wear this human skin, sacrifice, again, back to Lindo Man, back to the other sacrifices. People were sacrificed to bring the fertility back, you know, in the spring, etc. And he's doing the same thing. He's wearing the same skin.
I haven't heard either about them wearing human skin.
Yeah, so some of the parts of the human sacrifices, especially with the Aztecs, didn't find their way into the ground. They had other uses and other purposes. There's a fantastic, I used to use it for schools, a fantastic picture of an Aztec priest, and it's made in clay, it's a clay figure. And he's wearing this cloak, and when you look at the cloak, he's got his normal arms, his shoulders and his arms are in front of him. And then coming up from the ground at the bottom of the cloak, there's two other arms coming up the wrong way, up his cloak. And you suddenly realise that he's got another pair of shoulders down by his feet. He's wearing this, and then he's got these two baubles here that fasten his cloak. And I used to say, you know, I'm not quite sure what his cloak fastening's made of. And all the lads in the audience would just go,
oh my God.
Because that's exactly what it looks like. He's holding his cloak together, so, you know. That picture's in the book as well, so if people want to double check that, you can go and double check it.
Double check it.
Yeah, you can.
Oh my God. Okay, so from there, then it just pretty much lost its whole concept of what it really truly meant into just this emblem of something that nobody knows about. I'll give you a quick example. Dee and I were at like some art fest, and they had a Celtic pendant, and I was really drawn to it. And I mean, I know about that stuff, but I asked the guy, and I said, well, what does this mean? Because I don't want to put something on that I don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know what it meant. So he told me to go online. It was on there. No, it wasn't online. No. I walked around for a half hour. I was finally like, you know what? I don't know what this is. And so many people they buy this stuff and they don't even know what it is. I mean, they're buying the Green Man. They don't know what it is, but you're telling us what it is.
In essence, yeah, that was the other reason for doing the book was the lack of information. I mean, occasionally it pops onto the sort of bestsellers bar of Amazon, because I don't know of any other book that has all of the information together in one place. That's the key with it. There's always been lots of speculation, you know, we know a lot about the archaeology, and there's been a lot of guesswork, and, you know, but really this book does pretty much nail it. It ties it all together. There's a few strange modern bits of story as well. Do you want to add a few more up-to-date bits in?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
of course.
I've not really explored the connection to the metal of the sun, which is copper. The reason it's connected is, as I started at the beginning by saying, is you mine it out of the ground, it comes out, it's green, but then they noticed thousands of years ago that when you melted it, it went gold. If anyone's ever seen melted copper, it looks like brass or bronze or whatever. That's how they do it, and they melt it. In those days, they melted it in crucibles the same way they do now. I was watching a television documentary on how they did it, and they were making a Bronze Age axe head, and they melted the bronze, and then this camera kind of goes and has a look into the front of this crucible, and the circle that appeared on the screen looked like the sun, and it just dawned on me. Back in, you know, prehistory and history, they thought in pictures, they thought in terms of images, and they realised that you could get this shining gold circle by melting copper, which starts off as green, and then they thought, they must have made the connection where they thought, well, hang on a minute, when the sun comes back in spring, so does the greenery, and life starts to blossom again.
Right.
So it became a part of the whole cycle. So the sun is also important. I mean, Egypt, obviously, they worship the sun. South America, they worship the sun. The Celts worship the sun. So obviously, it's a facet, if you like, of sun worship, of the solar worship. But then also you've got the darker side, because if you're making weapons out of copper, those weapons, copper or bronze, will take life. They have the ability to remove life. So that then ventures into the human sacrifice side of things, into the warrior, the war side of it, and the military side of it. And it suddenly dawned on me one day, they still make bullet cartridges out of brass or bronze. There's still to this day, even in this modern age, there is still in the military a place for copper. So there's a whole story there. There's an entire story there that has never been told. The connections that go back to the weapons side of copper and things that are made out of copper. So even now, even though we're thinking, oh, you know, it's rubbish, it's past, it's history, it doesn't affect us, you've got the environmental aspect, you've got the military martial aspect of it, you've got the life and death, you know, you've got the sun, the solar side of it, you've still got people putting it in the back gardens, you know, to generate life and bring that back. And we still live on a planet that still needs to, you know, resurrect once a year when the wheel of the year's gone round. We're still in that same position now. And yet, as you said, nobody seems to put anything on the internet. There's nothing about it. You know, nobody talks in these terms. So I think this book, you know, like I said, is every bit as significant. It's every bit as important as Crystal Skulls and Human Heads. Because this then, that's another direction it goes off in. This then looks at that little human head that appears staring through the greenery. So you've still got the head connection. So it's planet consciousness. It's the actual life. It's the life force, the consciousness of the planet itself. You know, it's going in that direction. So there are so many of these different aspects that kind of, you know, come in and bolt into it. I think I said in the last interview, if you get Crystal Skulls and Human Heads, the next book perhaps is Revealing the Green Man, because that will give you a lot of additional information about how people saw the Earth and the human face, etc., in days gone by. I did mention earlier on as well, I was going to come back to the issue of why there's no green woman. Yeah. And it's not a bad reason. Actually, from a lady's point of view, it's quite a good reason. And that is that most of the people sacrificed, if not all the people sacrificed, were men. That seems to be it. It's part of that overriding, you know, you need a big, strong, strapping warrior, best of the best with honours. If you're going to kill him, dump him into the ground and expect fertility to come back the following year. So I'd imagine all the ladies are sat there going, well, that's a really stupid idea. We don't really want to be involved in this. Right. You know, just leave us out of it. You know, so for like 10,000, 15,000 years, the ladies have been clever enough to dodge that bullet, literally. So I don't think it's a bad thing. You know, you can have green women, I suppose, nowadays if you want to, in the name of equality, but archaeologically, historically, there aren't any, to be honest with you. Most other cultures seem to favour men.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, actually, I haven't seen any green women. I mean, you know, I'm probably going to get like, oh, there's green women and, you know, things like that about it. And it's a woman. It's kind of like, you know, when you talk about God and you say he, you know, that brings up a whole nother, you know, that's a whole nother book just right there, you know.
Or you could keep it really, really short and just go, because we're all made in the image of God, God must be both. Or maybe neither.
Now, you know what? I didn't even read this, but it looks like we went over everything.
Well, I don't want to give away your trade secrets, but I did send those questions in the order that I thought they were going to come up. So
I didn't even. I had no idea. But anyways, I'm so glad because I didn't have to read it, which is great. Which is great. Now, is there anything else that you would like to go into that's a story or any other facts that are really unusual? Because I find this completely unusual. But if I do see a Green Man pendant, I'll want to buy one now. Okay?
Yes.
Because of what it signifies, and I know everything about it. So that to me is really important, or even ornamentation outside or inside, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
it's once you understand how much it's been a part of human life and human existence on planet Earth, then as a representation, it becomes really significant. It should be up there with all the religious symbols of the world. You know, it should be recognised as a major symbol. But again, like you say, you've really got to kind of dig in there and find out what it means and what it represents. But there are plenty of wow moments in the book in that respect. I mean, I've covered a lot of it, but by no means all of it. You know, there's a whole shed load of other stuff hiding away in the book. You know, and it does raise more questions like, you know, how do we get bronze? How does it relate to bronze? I skimmed over, obviously, the Iceman. There's a lot going on there as well. And then the whole Christianity thing and how we've ended up where we are. There's a ton more stuff in the book, a whole load more stuff. So I would encourage people to dash out there and buy it because, you know, it's only a small book, but it's got a lot in it. You know, we haven't covered it all.
Yeah, actually, it's got so much in it that I like I told you, my mind is boggled. But speaking to you, I understand. You know, I mean, I am understanding, but you do go into it really deep in the book.
Yeah, I like to encourage people to explore more. So in the age of technology, which we have now, like you say, the first thing you did was go off to the internet and try and find some information. But it's very, very difficult to find something if you don't have a starting point. So I do take care in writing books to try and give people starting points. So don't be put off by, you know, if it's technical or it's quite heavy in parts. Just, you know, take the lead, as it were, that's in the book and then take it further. You know, that's my advice, and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And if I had a wish, you know, if I wanted to sort of conclude where I wanted the book to go, a sort of a final chapter, if you like, I think the Green Man now should be the number one symbol, if you like, the number one representation of the green movement, you know, where we as a planet want to go. You know, it's got it all, hasn't it? You know, let's put it out there. You know, the whole idea of doing something, you know, to encourage the planet to renew itself and repair itself and move forward, you know, with humanity in harmony with its environment. You know, that I can't find a better symbol than that face in the leaves, you know, the Green Man. And I think the real key to it, the real wisdom, the punchline, if you like, at the end of it is, in the Green Man, we're part of the greenery, and the greenery is part of us, and you can't separate the two. You know, that's the real big, you know, punchline at the end of it. We should not be ruling over the planet. We shouldn't be trying to separate ourselves from it. We shouldn't just be using it as some kind of throwaway resource in the hope it's going to come back. We should actually be understanding it and getting dug in there and, you know, realising that we're a part of it and it's a part of us. You know, get rid of all the nonsense and the rubbish. You know, if there's no greenery, no power of life, no Green Man, there is no us. You know, when that ends, we end. I think it's a perfect symbol for that. That's where we should go in the future.
Well, I'm really hoping it does.
So am I.
I mean, and you're completely right. I mean, after speaking to you, yeah, it makes sense 100%. But, you know, does anyone think of putting the Green Man on, you know, this new movement? I haven't seen anything.
Neither have I, but maybe, just maybe they will now. You never know. You never know.
Yeah. Well, you would be the first person that would have said this, so you'll go down in history.
I'm sure I'm going to go down in history, but I bet you it's not for that.
and hopefully Mark Olly will be like, you know, a big name, and the book will be read by this new movement that's going on. You know, I mean, so I really appreciate you actually telling me about it because I love the Green Man. I didn't really know, and now I know. So, you know, if I go and I see in some of these fairs there's environmentalists that want you to sign a petition or something, I'll sign and say, look into the green man, Mark Olly.
Thank you.
You know, seriously, to find
Yeah.
out where this came from, and then now where we're at right now, that all of this signifies where we need to be right now on Earth.
Yeah, yeah. I think it kind of has within itself everything that we've lost, you know. And I think there's, I'm trying to remember what the zip line was on this, because I always do a zip line. What was the restoration of the oldest religion on planet Earth? That's what we should be aiming for. We should be bringing all of this back. People need to know it. You know, it's important. It's something we've lost, and it needs to be brought back.
Yeah,
So,
I absolutely agree with you. And is there anything else that you want to say other than that? I mean, I think we've covered everything, and
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
find it absolutely fascinating. You've said it in a short amount of time. I also think that, you know, you explaining this is very, you know, our interview today is easy to understand, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and so we didn't go into anything really heavy where people just go off and go, oh God, no, you know.
Please stop hitting me.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
stop, you know, that this is really just kind of a bottom line, you know, which
Yeah.
I love just, what is the bottom line? You know, you want to
Yeah.
get to know all the other stuff, but really what is this about? And for you to come up with your conclusion that we just discussed,
Yeah.
all I can say is fantastic job.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I do my little advert that I always do? Because
Yeah,
that's the book.
yeah.
A very famous artist of mine did the cover for this one. It's a guy called Anthony Potts. So hats off to my friend Potty, who did the cover. Did a wonderful job of that. He loved the fact that I mentioned him, and he never gets mentioned. So there's some really good commissioned artwork in here. So please dash out and buy the book, because you know there might be a new movement here waiting to happen.
Yeah.
As always, I'm on Amazon. You can get them all on Amazon.
Yeah.
I reel them all off at the beginning, so you know you've got Ninth Legion, Robin Hood, Green Man, Crystal Skulls. Go find them, because they're all on there. Anybody that wants to contact me, Facebook. Let's keep it simple. Facebook. Send me a message on Messenger, or a friend request and friend me. Come and find me. That's it, really. I'm a man of very simple contactability.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'll put it under your description on your, you know, what is a green man in your bio, which I always do. I always want to give people credit. Geez, that was, Crystal Skulls and Human Heads. The cover of that is absolutely amazing. Show it.
That one, there you go.
That is, I saw that, I don't know, and how I contacted you or what, however. I saw it somewhere and I was like, I've got to know who this guy is.
It's a human skull.
Because of the cover.
Yeah,
And it
it's
does,
attractive.
and on here that does no justice because it's almost like 3D or, you know.
It has kind of turned out that way.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether to put some kind of fancy sci-fi cover or something on, but hats off to Philip Mantle, the publisher, because he stuck with that image. And he said, no, that's got to be the cover, and he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think, like you say, that is the cover for that. But to
Yeah.
have a human skull trapped inside a crystal one, you know, it really does kind of summarise that. And as I say, it's a good partner to the Green Man, this book. So if you've got the two together, I mean, it's only 50,000 words for both books. You know, we're not talking about
50,000 words.
Yeah, just so I don't scare people off. Look how thin they are. See?
You gotta give me pages, not words. You know, how many pages?
They're about 95 pages each, and that's with photographs.
Okay.
You know.
I can
That's with
understand
photographs.
That's easy. That's an easy one. Okay.
It's a few hours reading, you know what I mean? Put yourself a glass of JD and go and sit, you know, when the sun's setting, you know, go and get on the porch,
right.
You know, in the rocking chair and, you know, wrestle with one of these for a couple of hours. Fabulous, you know what I mean? They go two at once.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Easy reading. Don't be put off by how technical I can get. You know, it's easy reading.
Exactly. Well, I just want to say, it's always, you're so much fun. You are so fun. I just love it when it's fun, you know. And you know I don't do the Muppet head thing where you just my head and your head. This gives us kind of like, I don't know, like you're here, you know. It's really fun. We're having fun.
It's a talk show. It's a chat show.
It's a talk show. I mean, it's really fun. It's great. And you're great to have on because, you know, you can joke about it and you can be serious about it and you can go in all these different directions, which is a fantastic personality. So
well, the best thing to do is pick another topic, because I have sent you some info on that. Whatever topic you want to do, get back to me and we'll do it again, because I'm delighted to come on. Absolutely delighted. Any time.
Okay, well, send me the topics and we'll have you on.
Okay.
Because I haven't gotten any of the topics. And I love it because, you know, you're scientific and you can go back, you're fun, you know, we just went over all this stuff. So yeah, love to have you on again. And I know people are just going to love this because it was easy for me to understand as well, which is absolutely fantastic. I didn't even have to use my notes.
Always good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
all right. Well, I just want to say thank you so much again, and everybody out there. I just want to say Mark Olly will be coming on again sometime, and I'm sure we'll be scheduling really soon. All right, so thank you very much. And I will say, I don't know what you say in Britain, but I say over and out or ciao ciao. What is it that you say?
Hurrah, goodbye, you know, auf Wiedersehen, etc.
Okay.
we will meet again. Or never say goodbye, because you never know. It's never the end.
That's, you know, that's interesting. I think you and I could really get into this for a second, just before we leave. But my boyfriend and I both say ciao ciao, and we never say it to anybody, you know, goodbye or anything like that. We always say ciao ciao because we believe in exactly what you're saying. Goodbye is like, oh my God, goodbye. You're gonna go in a funeral. Are you gonna go in a funeral? Okay, am I gonna see you again? So I'm gonna say ciao ciao.
Okay. I can't do what I always do, because I always like to, when I depart, I usually like to give the person a hug, because if I was to never see them again, I would always want to leave on a high point. So I'm entirely with you on that one. Everyone who parts should always part company on a high point. I do
that a lot. I do that
so
a lot.
I'm sending transatlantic hugs to you even now.
Okay, hugs to you too, because I hug a lot of people, but people are really weird now. About hugging and stuff. But I'm a hugger.
I am as well.
So I'm a hugger. You're a hugger. It's all good. Okay, Mark. Thanks for coming on. All right. Thank you.
See you next time.
Okay. Yeah. See you next time. Ciao, ciao.